Good morning and welcome to this special edition of The Balancing Act presents Behind the Mystery of Wilson Disease.
It's a rare genetic disorder in which the body's ability to remove copper is compromised, impacting the liver, brain, and more.
Today we're going to meet a dedicated physician, an advocacy group leader, and a CEO whose company is pioneering the first advancement in treatment for this disease in nearly 30 years.
But first, someone that knows all too well what it's like to live with this condition. So let's go
Behind the Mystery.
I was actually diagnosed because of my brother. They had found that he had Wilson's disease. He had a really great pediatrician who actually picked it up on his blood tests. And when they were working him up, they wanted to screen me as well. And then they found out that I also had Wilson's disease. I feel really lucky that I was able to have my brother when I was going through all of this. It can be so scary as a little kid, not really knowing what's going on, having all these tests. I can't imagine doing it again without having my brother by my side.
Wilson's disease is an inherited condition where you have malfunction of a gene called ATP7B, and that codes for a protein that is responsible for carrying copper into and out of the body. Most of the copper you're exposed to comes through the diet and is absorbed in the small intestine, and once it makes its way to the liver, it's able to leave the body appropriately through a properly functioning gene. When there is a defect in the ATP7B gene, this leads to excess copper accumulation in different parts of the body, primarily the liver, the brain, and the eyes. Accumulation of copper in the body can lead to liver disease or neurologic or psychiatric symptoms. If left untreated, then Wilson's disease can ultimately lead to death, which is typically from liver failure. Wilson's disease patients can also have copper accumulation in the cornea, and that can look like a copper ring, which we refer to as Kaiser-Fleischer rings. Some patients may also have bones or kidneys affected as well. Since Wilson's disease is a rare disease, there needs to be a high index of suspicion so that clinicians are actually looking for Wilson's disease. So it's important for gastroenterologists and hepatologists to consider Wilson's disease in all patients who they evaluate for abnormal liver tests. There are also some patients who present only with neurologic symptoms. Most common is patients who present with a movement disorder, and in these patients, Wilson's disease should be included in the differential diagnosis. When a patient is identified with Wilson's disease, we do recommend their relatives to be tested, and this is particularly important for their children or their siblings.
Growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of symptoms of copper accumulation on my body. It more impacted me in that I had to do the lab tests and take medication. At first, it was kind of confusing as a little kid, not having symptoms and not knowing why I had to do all of these tests and that sort of thing. But it eventually just kind of became integrated into my life.
More Behind the Mystery when we come back.
Welcome back to Behind the Mystery.
Once a diagnosis is made of Wilson's disease, there are certain steps in the appropriate management for that patient moving forward. Patients are started on medications that we refer to as chelators to get rid of excess copper from the body. The options that we have for chelating agents are trientine 2-HCl and penicillamine. We also counsel patients on consuming a low copper diet. Once the patient has completed the decoppering phase, we then transition to the maintenance phase. In the maintenance phase, the options for copper chelators are penicillamine, trientine 2-HCl, which requires refrigeration, or trientine 4-HCl, also known as Couvreur, which does not require refrigeration. Another option during the maintenance phase may be to use zinc The way it works is by blocking the absorption of copper in the intestines. It is critical, however, for patients to understand that treatment is lifelong and medications need to be continued essentially for life.
So I was on the zinc for a number of years from my childhood, but my doctors were telling me that on the zinc, my liver function tests and my copper levels still weren't normal. And they explained to me that I might just be a partial responder to zinc. As I got older and learned a little bit more about Wilson disease, I started learning about all the symptoms you can get with it and the neurological effects that can happen if you have too much copper buildup. And that was pretty scary to me. You know, I've chosen to pursue a career as a surgeon, and it's really important that I have control of my body. And that's when I talked to my doctor about switching to a chelator so that I would have less chance of having those neurological symptoms from the copper accumulation. Switching from zinc to chelators was definitely a challenge. I started the chelators when I was in medical school, and having to refrigerate them was really difficult. So it was a real challenge for me trying to keep my meds refrigerated and bring a cooler with me whenever I was traveling for conferences, for work, or just for fun. I actually spent a year doing some research in Denmark. It was definitely challenging having to factor refrigeration into all of that.
It's important for patients with Wilson's disease to follow closely with their care team and to follow the management plan, including the medications that are necessary. While these are effective treatments, adherence can be problematic for some patients. One of the difficulties with adherence is the fact that some patients aren't actually symptomatic, so it's difficult to understand the necessity of taking a lifelong medication on a daily basis. Portability may also play a role in the adherence for patients. For instance, the trientine 2-HCl does require refrigeration, and in some of these patients who need to take it 2 or 3 times a day, it is difficult to carry the medications around in a cooler pack all day. Without ongoing treatment, there will be reaccumulation of copper, which is ultimately the reason why there is progression of disease.
More behind the mystery when we come back.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, joining us in the studio is Rhonda Rowland, Vice President of the Wilson Disease Association.
We are so glad to have you back here with us again to raise awareness for Wilson's disease.
Absolutely. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'm so pleased to be back.
Your role has changed since the last time you were here. What's that changed as far as what you've been doing?
Well, I'm on the executive committee, so a lot of decision making that we have to make on behalf of all of our members. And I lead our communications to just reach out to everyone and educate and raise awareness. And then I'm also the liaison for our pharmaceutical stakeholders, which
You're
is
busy.
something, yes, and it's something I really enjoy.
So what would you say in terms of evolution? What have you seen in the management options, right, of Wilson disease in the community?
Well, first of all, when I was diagnosed at age 21, there was only one approved treatment at that time.
And today?
And today we have 4 approved treatments, which is excellent.
That's fantastic.
Here we have these 4 treatments, but the challenge is getting them diagnosed and also then adherence to medications or their treatment regimen. That continues to be a challenge. The Wilson Disease Association's mission is to provide hope and support to people worldwide, and so they can live the best quality of life possible. That's primarily what we want to do for people.
Now tell me a little bit about this thing, this Patients Assistance Program that you have?
We try to help our members in different ways, and a few ways is to help them get medications by directing them to patient assistance programs to help them with that. Also, we really want our patients to be able to see doctors, specialists at our Wilson Disease Centers of Excellence, so we do provide a one-time benefit for them to go and travel and do that, or also to travel to our annual conferences. So we want them to do that as well.
And how's the relationship between the pharmaceutical industry and the WDA changed?
There has been an evolution with that where there is a partnership now really between advocacy and with industry, and that is so important because we're able to have open lines of communication to talk to them about what the needs are, the unmet needs in our community. Also assess where there are probably gaps in knowledge so that we can work together to get the right information out to everyone.
Speaking of working together, I was reading here that you work as a liaison between the community and Orphalon. So what has that partnership with Orphalon been like?
Well, first of all, it's been great.
That's fantastic.
They're wonderful to work with, and they are so accessible. And we do meet regularly to talk about education efforts and, communication, what information to get out there. And they work with us to let us know about clinical trials, approvals of, new drugs, like with Orphalon. They introduced their drug 2 years ago that's FDA approved, and there are clinical trials to back up the effectiveness, and that science is so important, and it's available to patients in the United States and Europe. And what we really appreciate is they have a tremendous commitment to educating not only the Wilson disease community, the general public, but also physicians.
Communication information is the most important two things.
Yes.
So if people wanted to get more information, where would they go?
They would go to our website, wilsondisease.org.
Fantastic. By the way, as Rhonda just mentioned, the relationship between advocacy and industry is imperative. We recently sat down with the Chief Executive Officer at Orphalon.
Let's take a look at those conversations. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure to meet you, and
Absolutely.
thank you for inviting me.
Orphalon's tagline is innovation in rare disease, right? So tell me a little bit more about the company.
It's a French company started in 2011, and the literal translation of Orphalon into English is orphan.
Okay.
And as you know, these are diseases often that have been neglected. They're poorly diagnosed, no treatment may exist, or if there is a treatment, it may be suboptimal. And so it's a great privilege for us to work in these diseases.
How has it impacted your work at Orphalon?
So we have realized that we would need to gather more information. So we set up a global registry called the I. Wilson Registry that is trying to do that. We've enrolled 350 patients around the world, and we are following them over many years. We also have partnered in the US with the Wilson Disease Association. They have been invaluable for us to learn about the disease, the patients, and what we were developing. Was that going to make a meaningful difference in the patient's life? If you don't do that, you're not doing something right.
All right, doctor, stay right there, because when we come back, we are going to hear about a treatment option that addresses these unmet needs.
That's right. We'll take a little break. We'll be back right after this. Well, welcome back to Balancing Act presents Behind the Mystery of Wilson Disease.
We're continuing our conversation with Dr. Naseem Amin, Chief Executive Officer at Orphalon.
And before the commercial break, we were talking a little bit about how Orphalon addresses the unmet needs of patients, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
So the patient journey is a complex one. They have to take a therapy for life. They take it multiple times a day. Some of the products had cold storage requirements. So when we looked at it, we said, although there are treatments available, there was an opportunity to further innovate. We developed Couvreur as an alternative to other chelators that require refrigeration. So Couvreur was approved in 2022 by the FDA, who also granted it orphan exclusivity. It's a copper chelator indicated for the treatment of adult patients with stable Wilson disease. They've already been decoppered and tolerant to penicillamine. Couvreur provides convenient twice daily dosing, and it doesn't require refrigeration for long-term maintenance therapy.
And doctor, how did it actually come to be?
Couvreur was the first advance in Wilson disease since 1997. Couvreur has been backed up by a randomized clinical trial in Wilson disease, where patients are followed for over a year, and that resulted in its approval. And we continue to invest in research and development to better serve these patients.
And let's hear more about Couvreur from Dr. Cheung and how it has helped the patients she treats. Take a look.
Couvreur brings the innovative formulation of trientine tetrahydrochloride designed for patients with Wilson's disease who are decoppered and tolerant to penicillamine. Couvreur is a copper chelator that works by attaching to the copper in your body and helping your organs release it into the bloodstream and removing it safely in the urine. It also works by binding to and preventing the absorption of copper in the gut from the food you eat. Administer Couvreur on an empty stomach at least 1 hour before meals or 2 hours after meals and at least 1 hour apart from any other food or milk. Patients should be aware that their Wilson's disease symptoms could get worse when they start treatment because too much copper is removed in a short time. In addition, some patients can develop copper or iron deficiency, and patients should have tests done by their doctor to monitor these levels and adjust the dose of Couvreur as necessary. Also, allergic reactions such as rash can occur. Patients should not take Couvreur if they are allergic to Trantine or any other ingredient in Couvreur. The most common side effects are pain in the abdomen, change in bowel habits, rash, hair loss, and mood swings. Side effects are consistent with other Trantine formulations. Couvreur is packaged in a convenient blister pack and comes as small tablets that are easy to have, making dosing more flexible and swallowing easier. Couvreur can be kept at room temperature, so you don't have to worry about storing your treatment in a refrigerator or transporting it in a cooler. Having an open discussion with your physician or treatment team about your treatment-related questions, concerns, and goals can be a great way to make sure a treatment approach is right for you and to continue to receive the care that meets your needs.
Please see additional and important safety information at the end of this video.
Now, doctor, access to rare disease treatments can be very difficult. What is Orphalon doing to help?
So Wilson's disease is a huge burden for these patients and their families, and for society as a large. Our obligation as a manufacturer innovator was to make sure everything we do to help patients and physicians is made available. So we have a variety of support programs. You have something called Navigator program. It's a no-cost program to provide access support to eligible patients who are prescribed Couvreur throughout their entire treatment journey. Every eligible patient will have access to a dedicated care coordinator who will help them understand their insurance coverage for Couvreur and the processes that may be required by their insurance plan to obtain approvals such as prior authorizations and the type of copays and/or financial assistance that might be available. Additionally, the care coordinator may be able to help the patient get started on their therapy while their physician and pharmacy work with the insurance plan to obtain ongoing coverage.
And what have you learned leading a pharmaceutical manufacturing company that's focused on orphan diseases?
So people who come into this field, whether it's in research, development, commercial, manufacturing, they're all, I've learned, have an empathy for patients, and especially for patients with these rare diseases. And I'm incredibly proud that we have a team dedicated to this.
Doctor, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, and congratulations on all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your passion. I do appreciate what you're doing for these patients.
When my doctor prescribed me Couvreur, my Wilson's disease was stable and I was decoppered and tolerant to penicillamine. What I really liked about the Couvreur was that it could be kept at room temperature, so I didn't have to worry about the refrigeration and bringing coolers with me whenever I traveled or when I was busy at work. The tablets are pretty small and you can break them in half, which makes it a lot easier to swallow them. Overall, Couvreur made a really big impact on my day-to-day life. It's really nice that the dosing is just twice a day and it makes it really convenient. I take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach while I'm getting ready for work, and then I go in and do my day, and then I can take it on an empty stomach also at night when I come back. I'm actually just coming to the end of my first year of surgical residency, and as I'm more immersed in the field of medicine, I just feel really lucky that I was diagnosed so early and I was able to get on this medication. Yeah, I'm excited to keep going with my surgical training, and having had this experience makes me feel like I can be a better doctor and that I can relate to my patients a little bit more about what they're going through.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on this very special edition of Behind the Mystery of Wilson's disease.
For more information on the work Orphalon is doing, visit orphalon.com. Speak to your doctor about Couvreur. Full prescribing information can be found at couvreur.com, and you can always go to our website, thebalancingact.com.
And please stay tuned for more important safety information. We'll see you next time.